Welcome to episode 8 of the Coast to Coast AFL podcast with Nick and Blaze. This week we are going. This is the round of upsets because, oh boy, there were a lot of them. We're going to talk about pretty much all of the upsets. We might touch on the more predictable sort of games that ended up happening, such as Hawthorn losing yet again. Aren't we all surprised about that? We're also going to touch on the Rising Star, the MRO, a little bit of other news about Chief Jason Dunstall, and yeah, so take a seat or go for a walk if you like walking, or however you listen to us. Have a drink and come along for the ride. How are you doing, Mr. Psyrick?
Not too bad, not too bad. Found my way. I guess it's not really back to the coast, back to the forests of the Western Australia, back in my own abode, and
home.
Yeah, going quite good. Missed a chunk of some of the good games on upset round. Had to do a bit of catch up on the back. Went to my cousin's son's birthday party.
Oh yeah.
And although I didn't get to watch the Adelaide St Kilda game, I got ice cream cake. So in the end, all balances out, and I'm looking forward to wrap up another week of footy.
Sounds good to me. Yeah, I was at the museum most of Saturday, so I missed most of the close games then. And then, yeah, it was just busy weekend, so I didn't get to really catch up on much. So I did it all yesterday. So
That's all good.
shall we jump right into it with the Thursday night game of Melbourne and Brisbane?
Let us go. Exactly.
So the scoreline was 8-12-60 to 12-10-82. Brisbane getting a win away from home because for some reason this season they look bad at the Gabba but great everywhere else.
Exactly.
Former number one draft pick Cam Rayner had a dominant performance, finishing with 25 touches, 14 contested possessions, 10 inside 50s, 9 clearances, and 7 score involvements. Probably one of the best games from him, at least over the past couple of years. There was a strong.
You'd say best goalless game, definitely.
Oh yeah, for sure. It was pretty much a battle in the middle the entire way through. With I did mention Cameron already. Lockie Neal having 24 touches and 8 clearances, usually a star player as he always is. Josh Dunkley looked really, really good this week. 30 touches, 5 inside 50s, 4 score involvements. Joe Danaher and Eric Hipwood, I think, had one of their best games as a duo that they've had in a while. Because normally either one performs, the other doesn't. But I think both looked really, really consistent this week. What else do we have? Lever and May, I thought they looked okay, but they definitely looked really, really sore and tired, considering what they, the injuries that they've had over the past couple of weeks.
They've been a lot of Melbourne on their shoulders, and we'll have the well-deserved break tomorrow. Oh, next week, sorry.
Yeah, they definitely, the whole team, honestly, just really needs this bye before Anzac Eve. And if you look at the stats on this game, they kind of tell a different story, but on field, and you pointed this out to me, Jack Viney, Christian Petrarca, and Clayton Oliver had one of their worst games as a duo since 2019.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry,
I should say I got that from Emlyn Brace, the person who does the there's a lot of good graphics that we sometimes reference.
We shouted them out a couple of weeks ago on the pod. I might put them back down in the links this week.
Just such an aberration for Melbourne. It's the first time all three have just not performed on the same night, and just really cost them really in the centre.
Petrarca and Oliver only got 3 clearances combined. Viney had 7, so he was doing a little bit better in that regard. All 3 of them had 6 tackles collectively and no scores, which is really unheard of for those 3.
Yeah.
And I don't think they even really had any score involvements either. Like, they were just really, really quiet across the field.
Yeah. I mean, I can quickly check that for you, but...
Yeah, it's one thing I didn't entirely note down. Is there anyone else that... I mean, you had to have a brief look at this game. Is there anything that stood out to you?
as I said, only the briefest. But no, as I said, it was just a lot of quiet performers from Melbourne, and what we said before as well. It just can't quite get that forward line functioning together, and a lot of their victories have, of course, been a bit in spite of it.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Ben Brown, just the one goal. Rich, he had 2 goals, but very quiet in possessions. So yeah, as I said, it's one of those things where, yeah, Melbourne have just got to really, I don't know. I guess for a deep threat, they probably definitely want to get more involved in terms of, their forward line. But
Mm-hmm.
again, their other structure's pretty good. It's just the Lions statistically seemed like they got their game that they got last year going, dominating disposals, dominating clearances, and just defending from possession. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, just a nice win from them there. Again, solid win against quality opponent should hopefully uh, bridge that gap for them to come back into the eight. Should they get there?
Yep. I pretty much agree.
And yeah, just quickly, there were score involvements. Christian Petrarca did get 7,
Oh,
but the rest were very quiet. Viney got 3, and where is
you're looking
can't
for
even
Clayton
find him.
Oliver.
Yeah, Clary. He's also got 3.
Okay.
So yeah, 3's pretty below par for mids.
Yeah,
7's all right.
it's not great. Um,
Yeah,
the only injury this week was to Christian Salem, which happened within the first 10 to 15 minutes of the game, which
yeah,
was really
it's
unlucky.
very hard.
It's a hamstring
Yeah,
injury as well, so he'll be out for a couple of weeks. Which,
and I
which is
think
really unlucky
as
because
I
I think he's a really good player for them. Like, I really like how he goes about his game.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not. As I said, it all went wrong as well. With Christian Salen going down and the all the midfield players just not showing up.
Mm.
Well, you know what I mean by showing up.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
as I said, it's one of those games, and not the only one this week. Absolute dominations in hit out, 51 to 60, 26. Sorry,
Jeez.
from Gorn to McKerney. Um,
I
but
mean,
yeah, as I said, it's just.
that's about right for Gorn, though. Like, he's very consistent at least.
Yeah. Oh no, that's what I mean. It's just for that many hit out dominance. I don't know. It doesn't always convert to contested possession. It's just Brisbane obviously read it better. Um, you know, worked better at the stoppage, and as I said, maybe Melbourne were thrown off a bit by that.
Mm.
Maybe who knows, but it definitely didn't seem like much was going right for the Melbourne that night.
Well, it's always bound to lose a couple here and there.
Yeah,
Even
oh, for
if you are
sure.
even if you are one of the better teams in the competition.
Yeah, as I said, I don't knock them back, but in terms of trying to cement top 4, maybe even go for the number 1 spot, which I think Melbourne's still in that group of contenders for it. You know, it's a hard one to lose because they would have been looking very good,
Mm.
just for 5-1 going into the bye, but they're not that far off the pace either.
No, they're not going too badly. Shall we move on to Friday night's game?
Yes, and yeah, it was a very interesting one with the Western Bulldogs taking on Essendon. It started as a very loose, high-scoring, defense-free footy. Absolute treat to watch. But it'll be Essendon in the second half, putting on the clamps in a lot of areas against, a fairly, I'd say, insipid Bulldogs performance. And they won the contest 9-13, 67 for the Bulldogs. 15-6, 96 for Essendon. Uh, Honestly, the Dogs might have been able to get a bit closer to the Dons if they converted their wider shots like the Dons were able to.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't just goal kicking ability. It was the Dons dominating from stoppage, which was a very flipped effort from last week where they got absolutely smashed around the middle. And also, yeah, as I said, it wasn't just stoppage in the center, it was stoppages around the ground,
Yep.
and their forward line ground ball gets as well. For once, Merritt wasn't relied purely to win out the stoppages. Sam Durham could not have come back at a better time for the Dons. They reminded them why they loved the young gun. Got 7 clearances, 6 from the centre, 6 score involvements from his 21 possessions.
Very nice, very
And
nice.
on the flip side, it was sort of Libba or nothing in terms of the centre circle. Bontempelli had a quiet night, and, Trelaw was around, wasn't as impactful.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Libba was very hard. They lost the centre clearances 10-16, so it was pretty low centre clearances anyway, as you would expect from a low goal scoring game. But yeah, so they sort of lost that contest. It was similar scoring shots. The Dogs scored 3-4 from their opportunities to 7-2 from Essendon. So again, similar opportunities. Essendon just converted. Goldstein, again, someone who from last week had a bit of a down game, had an absolutely fantastic night. Took a bit more time, let Draper play forward, and yeah, just made English very negligible. Yeah. Also, Essendon, I think, were a lot better at keeping the ball in their half, and showed a lot of resistance from kick-ins when the third quarter, where they weren't exactly scoring. They were keeping it locked in their half, and yeah, sort of just dominating possession while they eventually won the arm wrestle, got a lot of scores late in the fourth, and yeah, as I said, sort of, I wouldn't quite say put the cue in the rack, but they just, just sort of coasted from there. And on the flip side, I think the Bulldogs very reliant on Jamari Ugle-Hagan up forward.
Yeah,
he was the most threatening forward of the day. 6 scoring shots, 3 goals, 3 behinds. Darcy did present well, but didn't convert. His only goal came from a sort of loose, close to goal. But I think it's just, as I said, touched on earlier, the mosquito fleet for the Dons, when the ball hit the ground, there were always players there, and you just didn't see that for the Dogs. Langford was very crafty. Stringer, again, not high disposals, but good impact. Harrison Jones made opportunities when, from the reasonably small amount both of those players got. And Xavier Dersma, absolutely fantastic on the wing. 2 very clutch goals, busted out the bow and arrow, busted out the you can't see me. Probably watched WrestleMania.
Put some respect on the name this week.
I know. And yeah, as I said, overall, a much deeper effort than the Bulldogs were able to provide. Yeah, and in terms of injuries, Libba got a knock. Delayed concussion in the game. There was a lot of talk about it.
Yeah,
stumbled,
it wasn't very pretty.
Ankle. No, and I guess a discussion about it, and, we might talk a tiny bit about Bevo and just a bit of weirdness going on around them, but as I said, he was monitored and brought into the concussion protocol. Mackay also got a hit, but hasn't entered the protocol very late in that contest. And, as I mentioned earlier, Riley Sanders was very solid, I thought. It wasn't as good as he was last week, but definitely did enough, and it was a very strange sub out. And, he might be dropped because he apparently spat the dummy a bit. Look, I must admit, I can't blame him, but I guess there's a certain amount of professionalism that you sort of got to be. So if he gets dropped next week, that's sort of just on him. He'll learn from that. But yeah, it's just very interesting things going on with the Dogs at the moment. And this inconsistency probably has the fans at the moment a bit unsettled at the moment.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, good on Essendon for showing up and giving a much better performance this week.
Yeah.
They weren't great last week. Despite winning, they were very average against St Kilda. So it's good to see them actually build some consistency. It's not great for the Dogs because I like the Dogs, but, win some, you lose some, right?
Look. Yeah, and it's one of those wins where it's just, and I think for Essendon, I think it's actually going a bit under the radar because they're about where they're at, 3 wins against teams that are around them. Unfortunately, Bulldogs can just be considered a team that's around Essendon. Um, and, but I think from what they're able to do with their forward line, I thought that would cause them a bit of problems this year.
Mm-hmm.
They're generally converting pretty well. They've got a wide range of options. I think that's a bit above what I expected. Again, that midfield, apart from that aberration against Port, doing okay. And I just want to propose, like, I know it's very crude early in the season to compare the two teams, but I almost feel like Essendon are getting more playing like a similar style to the Bulldogs, very contested,
Yeah.
relying on forward line, but just with a lot less pieces. And, I don't know if that's particularly fair on the Bulldogs, but I
I
think it's just a match
I think it's a
testament to
I think it's a good
Essendon.
comparison because of the fact that
Yeah.
everyone didn't really rate Essendon all that high going into this season. Like we
No.
thought they were just going to be, middle of the pack, still trying to, build some pieces, finally some sort of form. They've at least hit the form, which is good. Like they actually do look really
Yeah.
solid. But I mean, if they, with, picks that have always come from kind of the lower end of a draft,
Mm.
and I think they've done they've done mid-season picks, they've done supplemental picks over the past couple of years as well.
Yeah.
Like, if you're able to show good results with a team that isn't exactly like staff powered, like
Mm.
like a team that, for example, the Giants are or like the Suns
Mm.
are, that's really good because it shows that it doesn't matter if you're a player in the top 10 draft. As long as you
Yeah.
perform your role, you're able to help your teammates with your results and
Mm.
show that you're a team that can't be underestimated is a
Yeah,
good is a
exactly.
good thing. It's what
And I think
it's
yeah,
what Richmond
that's
kind of did with 2017, because
yeah.
end of 2016 season, we had some great players, but we
Mm.
don't showing any results. We got some
Yeah.
trades in, maybe players that weren't exactly ranked all that high, specifically
Yeah.
Nankervis. I know Caddy and Prestia were because they
Yeah.
come from the
Paddy, yeah.
Suns. They were high draft picks. Well, Caddy originally came from Geelong, but started at the
Yeah.
Suns, sort of thing. But they were high draft picks, so
Yeah.
everyone kind of had some expectations for them, but Nankervis not so much. And then
Mm.
he became one of the best ruckmen to play the game at that point in time. So it's
Yeah.
like if you have good performances with these lower tier players, there's no telling where you will go, and that's
And
exactly what's kind of happening with Essendon right now.
yeah, and it seems like, that's what I'm saying, is like two teams going in opposite directions because their age profile are actually very similar. They're both average 26.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that seems about
Around
right.
26 for the average players. They've got a few older veterans at either end, sort of skewering, and they're pumping a few young people. But as I said, the difference just seems to be is just, it's not a perfect system, but it's gelling for Essendon a lot more. And I can see sort of the direction they're going to, even though I was a bit more skeptical. And on the other side, sometimes the Bulldogs, and it's a tag that Essendon actually did have for a few years, especially in the the Merritt Heppel era in the
Mm-hmm.
late 2010s. Very individualistic. There's a lot of parts. Obviously, Essendon known for getting in players that didn't quite fit their scheme, but
Yeah,
with the juicy price tag, your Shields, even Stringer himself. But yeah, as I said, it looks a lot more cohesive now. And the trades that they did get this year has been fantastic and a lot
Jasmer
more
especially.
what they need. So props to them. Yeah, as I said, uh, the list management with what's his name that's
I'm
left this year. I think that was his last one.
Yeah, this year was his last. I can't remember his name, but you are correct.
Dodoro, yeah,
Yeah,
Hadrian Dodoro. So he might have he might have actually had his best performance last. I mean, time will tell on that, and Essendon they'll have a few up and down performances in the season, but overall, really good for them. Western Bulldogs, it's a bit worrying. As I said, with the Bevo stuff, we don't really need to talk about too much. Media's going all on and about it, but I definitely think, if anything, it's one of those things where you can kind of see the disorganization through the team, and that's just not that great at the moment for a team that's not really known for its long-term consistencies in season.
Yeah.
And, there might be, the more chaotic it gets, the more the flats overtake the goodness, because, there have been a top 8 team, nearly top 4 team with a similar list, so it's sort of disappointing to see them go the other side.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Shall
Just
we
sum it
move?
up, I forgot.
Oh, sorry, go on.
I was going to say the players, Jamari Ugahagan, Liberatore, Trelaw were great for the Bulldogs. Lockie Jones did great down back. Give him a bit of a shout out in the spotlight. And Taylor Duray, I think it's actually probably his best performance at the Bulldogs. He hasn't really been that great for him.
He's had a lot of
Honestly, I thought he would have
performances.
retired after last season, but yeah, did fairly solid effort. And for Essendon, Merrick, Dersma, Langford, Goldstein, Durham, all fantastic. And in the spotlight, Caldwell and Kelly. I thought Kelly was actually pretty solid down back. And yeah, Caldwell just provided a lot of pressure. Yeah, move the ball. And yeah.
Sounds good. Shall we move on
Yeah.
to GWS and St Kilda?
Yes, indeed.
So, this was a game. And that's all I need to say because there was so much going on in this match. There was, like, Saints nearly clutched. They had 6 goals in the final quarter, which ended the margin at 11-14-80 to 12-7-79. Lucky Whitfield, I thought, had one of his best performances, at least especially the past couple of years. He finished with 34 touches, 9 marks, 10 score involvements. Marshall had a great game in the ruck for Saints. I thought he was probably one of his best performances as a ruckman, finishing with 28 touches, 16 clearances, 10 inside 50s, and 6 score involvements. Bradley Hill also starred, finishing with 33 touches, 13 marks. He was very lively and had really, really strong hands this week. 7 inside 50s, 10 score involvements. Jesse Hogan, Tom Green, Toby Green, the usual stars up forward for the Giants were really strong in the first half. But when Sam Taylor went down, it was pretty much that and Cornelio were the two kind of big key moments as to where the Giants kind of stopped, and they barely held on.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, it was one of those bad things, like, because it was probably going to be an interesting matchup, but it sort of got ruled out because obviously on the other side, King went down fairly early. So Sam Taylor against King, which was going to be a battle, was sort of taken from us.
By the end of the game, the Giants only had one bench rotation because Josh Kelly and Kieran Briggs also went down.
Yeah, for sure.
Which was really rough for them. But thankfully, I think GWS have a really good sub player that I think should make it into the 22 this week in James Peatling. I thought he had a really, really good performance when he came on. And for St Kilda, debutant Hugo Garcia, little Latin man, had a very, very strong performance, and I think he should hopefully be worthy of a 22 spot. Especially,
it's a tough side to get back into, but as I said, when you get the opportunities, only played a quarter of the game, produced some pretty good stats.
There's not much more you can really do when you only get a quarter to play, but you show what you got to show, and I think he looked really, really good.
Oh, for sure.
But yeah, that last quarter was incredibly intense to watch. At least on my phone, just watching the ticker go down because I was at the museum. I did manage to watch the highlights when I got back, and that was it was the most intense game I'd watched in the past. I wouldn't say 2 weeks because Richmond beating Sydney at the MCG was pretty intense, but it was really, 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 really great game as an impartial supporter.
Hmm.
But I can very much imagine how actual fans of either teams felt going into that.
Yeah, as I said, it's sort of just hard because, as I said, it was so Pyrrhic for the Giants. And yeah, on the flip side, the Saints who, I know they're looking for a four-quarter performance of football, and with this match, because it was so late, they haven't really done that. But, as I said, some of the players popping off, some of the goals being kicked, and, like, without Max King, they'll be pretty happy with 79 points against one of the better defensive teams in the competition.
Mm. Well,
In
there is at
GWS.
least some good news to come out of the injuries. Canelio and King's knee injuries were
Mm,
both cleared of anything bad, so they'll only take probably a couple of weeks to recover, and hopefully they'll be good.
mm.
What are we in now? Going into round 8? Round 8? No, round
Yeah,
6. They'll probably hopefully be ready round 9, round 10. Be good to see him back on the park. I
yeah,
don't
for sure.
know. I don't know what Kelly's rib issue is. That probably might take a little bit longer because I know ribs are very sensitive.
Mm,
Kieran Briggs' shoulder, I'm not entirely sure either. And obviously, Sam Taylor with concussion, he'll be out for all of this week. Um,
yeah.
I'm not too sure what the delay is in their game schedule, so they might be out
Yeah, so if
next
it
week
makes
as
the
well.
14 days, might win, might lose the opportunity to play
Yeah, but
two games in a row.
otherwise, I think actually, this despite GWS winning, I think they actually have a lot to learn from that fourth quarter, even if they only had one
Hmm.
bench rotation. And for
Yeah,
St Kilda, I think they should be very proud of what they almost accomplished in that last quarter. But they definitely have a lot to still learn in how to play 4 quarters.
yeah. It's very hard to get a perspective on St Kilda because, as I said, they did technically make the finals last year. It's same as Essendon. It's just like we've been talking to them
This
as
was
if
the
they're like a
elimination final
very
rematch because they played
yeah.
GWS.
Yeah, exactly. But it's yeah, as I said, we're treating them like lower teams, but I think that's just sort of where I was at. I think it's safe to say they probably overperformed a bit last year, but in the long term schemes of things, yeah, I said I think getting that consistency for both teams would actually make them threats because I don't think either were really looking to do that much, even though St Kilda were a lot higher.
Mm.
I think they finished sixth. Or was it fifth last year? No,
Uh,
Carlton were fifth, so it would
yeah, I
have
think
been
that was
sixth.
6th because it was a
So
game at the MCG.
yeah. So yeah. Uh
Yeah, I know.
sorry, yeah, I mean to be honest, it's just what I feel. It's just so hard with those as I said, those two teams because it feels a bit condescending, but I do think there's a lot of good work that makes it a bit more because I wasn't a huge believer in the Saints last year. Um, I think there's some of the changes they made in the off season, even though it hasn't quite come together. If they can build on the back half of the year and help, maybe even scrape into the finals,
Mm.
they can do a few things.
Yeah, I believe so. But still early in the season to really judge
Yeah,
completely.
exactly. I need a bit more of a read on them.
Yeah. You've got the next game we're gonna cover, I believe.
Yeah, so we'll hop on Carlton and Adelaide
Oh,
before
good. We
we
can both
skip
cover
to Sunday.
this. You may go
Um,
first.
going together. Um, honestly, I should note neither of us watched it. We're sort of just going a bit off highlights and stats. Blaze probably kept a bit more eye on the scores than me. But
I watched like a quarter of the last quarter. So I saw
yeah,
a little bit of how intense it was.
yeah. But from what seemed to be a cracking, free-flowing game of football, Adelaide made the most of their opportunities, whilst Carlton will be ruining a pretty wasteful third quarter in front of goals, falling just short to the winless but plucky Adelaide, 14-14, 98
Hmm.
to 16-4, 100. Um,
What a
was
nice
sort of
round
what
number.
I know, I know. There was a lot on offer for the forwards this week. Obviously, Adelaide struggled to get their forward line going. Carlton's obviously the opposite. They've had no problem generating for Mackay and Kerno.
Hmm.
Both of those had pretty good games. but unfortunately for Carlton, were pretty much the only real tolls for them that really got going. They got beaten 11-18 inside 50s, but those two lumbering tolls, Mackay and Corno, took 4 each and kicked 6 goals for altogether.
Off
But
19
on the
score
flip side,
involvements entirely.
yeah. So, yeah, on the flip side, Tex was absolutely clinical with his goal kicking.
He
4
was.
straight. Keys, Rankine, and Rochelle got the nicer, closer to goal entries, and were a lot more lively. As I said, I personally, I guess, had a bit of a go at the small forwards in general, just not providing enough, and absolutely responded. As you touched on last week, they did show signs,
Mhm.
and I think it's safe to say that they built from that.
Yeah, I
I'll let
agree.
you have
I'll touch
your
quickly
general
back on
thoughts.
Tex, because we mentioned he kicked 4 goals, but that was from 10 marks and 10 score involvements.
Yeah.
He was very, very prolific this week, which is good to see considering his age.
Mm.
Yeah, we mentioned that there were good signs for Adelaide last week and they needed to learn from it and build from it, which they did. What they did was they changed some players around in the middle. So they put Saligo and Rankin in towards the center. Sorry, towards the center. So they were attending more bounces.
I'm glad. Can I just because I
Go
actually
on.
saw the same thing, and I've actually got the notes on it for the specific stats.
Go on.
So Rankin got 11 contested possessions, 9 score involvements to go with his 23 possessions, 6 marks inside 50, and scoring 3 goals, 1.
Which is
And
interesting
as he
that he's got
mentioned,
6 marks inside 50 because he has 6 marks in total.
yeah.
It's very consistent
So
from him.
obviously he was very swing, and I think he definitely was more put onto the ball in the second half, from what I gather, because again, I didn't watch it. It seemed like Rochelle sort of went a bit more forward.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, Rankin still went forward. He took one of the late goals inside 50. But yeah, as I said, so on the flip side, Rochelle started, had a few possessions in the centre, then went a bit quiet when he moved forward. And as you mentioned, Saligo was more on ball. 15 contested possessions from his 27 disposals, 6 clearances, equal most with Crouch.
Yes, he did.
So he got more clearances than both the usual suspects, Dawson and Laird, who are both a bit quiet.
I'm going to touch on that in a moment, but go on.
Yeah. And the other thing I also mentioned is that I did find that might be a bit of a deep cut. Hinch was actually played a bit deeper in defence, racking up 10 intercept possessions, and still went up in the wing a bit like he normally does and got 5 score involvements. So a lot of tinkering by Adelaide.
And as we mentioned, it worked. They got a win on the
Paid
board.
off, yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
So yeah, because Saligo and Rankin were more pushed up into the center, that allowed Crouch, Dawson, and Laird to play more outside ball. And so Crouch finished with 27 touches, 6 clearances, 8 score involvements. Dawson with only 12 touches, but he had laid 5 tackles and had 6 score involvements. And Rory Laird had 22 touches and 5 tackles to finish out the day. With them playing more off ball, it allowed them to travel more around the ground.
Exactly. It's not like they were out of the contest. It's just they sort of just let the people who were shining shine.
Which is good. I think Rankin needs to play more on ball rather than play out ball because he has the speed to be able to break out of packs and get clear.
Yeah. And I think he's done a lot better at finding himself in the contest when he's been put into the middle. Back in the Suns, he used to very drift in and out when they moved that switch, but obviously in this game as an example, very consistent.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to touch on Sam Walsh because what a game for him to come back to. He had a thrilling performance despite the loss. The former number 1 draft pick was easily best on ground for the Blues. Finished with 34 touches, 13 tackles, 8 clearances, 11 inside 50s, and 9 score involvements from, I think, like 75 to 80-ish% efficiency.
6% game time. Efficiency. Okay.
I'm pretty sure didn't look at the exact number for that, but I'm pretty sure he had a really high efficiency on his disposal count as
similar
well.
efficiency. I just also noticed there was 76% game time as well, so it wasn't even like he went on the entire field that long compared to other players.
No, he had
For how much that he
roughly
actually
a
did.
quarter's worth of rest, and he still put on a
Yep.
thrilling performance because of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did mention Kerner and Mackay. They stood tall as they normally do, but just sometimes 14 behinds isn't enough. You need to kick one more goal to solidify a win.
Yeah.
Um,
Honestly, there's not much difference between the two teams at that rate. As I said, it's just moments and conversion.
Yeah.
Carlton just didn't quite get it, but they weren't playing badly. It was a
touch
team where
on
both hold their head high.
yeah, I agree. I'll touch on the injuries. Adam Sard did a hamstring. Mitch McGovern also did a hamstring. Adam Chera also did a hamstring, but he was a late change.
Yeah.
So he didn't get to play on field at all. I think he
Yeah. So I
just
will
had a
say
bit
it
of
was an
awareness
interesting
or
change.
soreness in the warm up.
Yeah. I will say it was an interesting change because Pitt Net got put in, which isn't exactly the most like for like, and yeah, it didn't really go all that well because both Pitt Net and De Koning gave away 8 frees altogether, and yeah, just really lost the hitouts. It was a bit. I don't think it exactly went to the way Carlton would have wanted it, planning into the week. But sometimes injuries just force you to do that.
Yeah, kind of just how it is. Sometimes you get unlucky.
Yeah. Oh, props to Riley O'Brien for taking full advantage of it, though.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Pretty great game by him.
Do you have the next game? Do you? Which game are we touching on next?
Yes. Depends which way you want to go, but Fremantle and Port Adelaide.
That's right.
A very close game to my heart because obviously in WA I do have a soft spot for Freo. So as I mentioned, I was out at night. I was out in the afternoon. Came back with my dad, just in time for the bounce. And yeah, we were treated to a very close game of football, very scrappy, and a game that I can only be described as both defenses being on fire, and each team really only allowed chances and moments to separate the two teams, and it'll be a couple of deep entries late by Port that given the victory in a dour but high-pressure contest, where Port won 9-12, 66 to Freo's 9-9, 63. As I said, it was a tale of two defenses, a tiny bit different each way. Freo's defense, the clamps were put on, a lot of Port's direct entries, with Pierce early getting a lot of interceptions and spoils. Ryan got a lot better as the game went on, and he started off pretty well. And they both sort of shut down Dixon and forced a lot of Port's shots, especially early, to be very wide and very low percentage, which they actually did convert a fair few of those. Georgie got a couple wide. I think one of them was also slotted by Marshall.
Yep.
But honestly, if it wasn't for the fact that Port could bring the ball to ground and get their goals that way, they would have scored bugger all. Absolutely fantastic efforts by Rioli, Rosie, and Butters. Obviously, Rioli, the pure forward, but he generated a lot of opportunities, especially sometimes. It was a 2-on-1 contest. You think, it's just going to get marked again. But Rioli brought the ball down, tapped it to Butters, he just slotted it. And I think that was just sort of the difference between, or at least how Port got a lot of their sort of goals that way. And on the flip side, Port would defend okay against Freo, but against their direct attack, they didn't let them get deep shots, but some excellent leading plays by Tracy, especially, who tore the game apart open. Honestly, I almost had to come to terms with the fact that Tracy was the person who sunk Port. Not to be, obviously, but Jai Amos took limited opportunities with his two hands. Again, he doesn't get the ball that much, but when he's on a lead, he'll mark it and he'll slot it, and Freo are absolutely loving it. But sort of opposite to Port, their forward pressure was sort of off, with Walters and Swiskowski having sort of limited impact, with Bailey Banfield really being the only one of the smalls to show glimpses.
Oh yeah.
So that was sort of a very dour contest. Obviously, there wasn't many goals scored. Both teams sort of struggled. They had a fair few interceptions, but were always rebuffed. But in the midfield battle, which, again, sort of more defence coming in here, from stoppages, both teams were able to score goals from their forward 50. So the ground ball pressure was good when they had stoppages there. Outside of that, it was just a lot of nullification going on. Freo won more clearances, but weren't able to generate much attack from them. Thanks to good tackling and off-the-ball pressure. Willem Drew, although, he wasn't quite as prolific, still brought a lot of pressure. And Port, with their less hit-outs, were able to break the line a bit more. And I think, in general, it was a lot of the class makers that had really great games. Sarong and Brayshaw both had moments. But I think Fife and Young sometimes could get the ball moving, looked really dangerous when they had it. And obviously for Port, I've already mentioned it, Rosie and Butters, their ability to just find space in, as I said, what was a dour, there was no space being presented to them, and Rosie and Butters were like, wow, you're so generous. Let me just have all day with the ball.
They know,
and
they
for
know
the
what
hard
their role
nuts.
is.
Yeah, exactly. The hard nuts, Sarong, Brayshaw, Wines, they still all had great hardball get games, all had their moments, and even had shots on goal, even though only Brebe, not to be confused with Bebe, capitalizing on their shots. And Jackson, it was an interesting rock battle. Jackson was very threatening around the ground, while Soldo absolutely smashed the hitouts, 67-25.
Yep.
Although, as I said, like the earlier game, they lost the clearances. And just sort of summing it all up, Zach Butters was lucky to escape suspension with a contest where he almost collected Fife. Don't think he quite made the high contact, and it was in the contest, so he got let off. But if it got any higher, that would have been looking for weeks. And as I said to Dad, you got to protect the Fife when he's healthy. You know what I mean?
We said that the other week in the podcast.
On his own.
Like, if Fife is healthy, keep him healthy. It's the only way he's going to
keep him healthy. Don't look. I know he's my own player, but Butters, if you're listening, don't go after Fife. I know you're a hard nut. You love going into the contest. You probably don't even notice the player in there. But in round 24, when we do play them again, look out for the long locks of hair. Brendan Zach Thatcher absolutely killed his shoulder going on a bump on Amos. Amos seemed very nonplussed by the whole thing, but it was very sore. He played out the game, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was sort of managed, maybe. And Dixon he was blanketed by Pierce, but was also battling a sore hip. And, I thought the effort he was able to provide, despite being hurt, just goes to show why you keep him in, because he definitely wasn't out attacking Pierce. He really just plucked a couple of goals from very contested positions, but ended up with 2 goals, one of them being very clutch. Freo finished with a clean bill of health, but I think they'll be looking to drop a few fringe players with minimal impact. Unfortunately, Johnson, Emmett, and the subarabusness, I think Emmett, despite having a dismal first half, at least got going a bit, which you want to see when a player doesn't do that. Had a very clutch goal late. And, I think Taberner might be going back to the reserves if Darcy comes back next week, which hopefully for Freo he might. And as I said, we might see a bit more pure tapping for Freo. Hopefully the way that their midfield's going, it'll be even more of a boon for them, because as I said, wasn't like Jackson was winning the ruck contest much, but so damaging around the ground, and if he can play more of that ruck forward, you might see, a few more goals. And honestly, if Darcy was playing, I think Port might have lost that game.
Yeah, there's a very fair chance of it, but Port got away. That's
exactly
4 points is 4 points.
Exactly. And just summing up the spotlight performers, Pierce, Ryan, Young, Brayshaw, Tracy, Butters, Rosie, Bergman, Jason Horse-Francis, Houston, and Ollie Wines. All fantastic. Probably the most I've bunched into this little segment. And in the limelight, Rioli, as I said, okay stats, a lot of impact, especially for that role of the small forward. Kane Farrell, absolutely brilliant down back, a lot of meters gained. Bailey Banfield and Fife, who I mentioned earlier. Just a lot of pieces, players that if they had a bad game, the Freo would have been a lot more off the pace. But yeah, as I said, in Dow contest, Port just getting a few moments. And a lot of teams will be thanking their lucky stars for a few moments. But, as I said, it was just a Dixon mark in a packed contest. And Jason Horne-Francis just taking a very out-the-back mark from a good centre clearance from Butters. And that was the game. I must admit, I will want to say the umpiring in this game was a lot worse than Freo's game last week. There were some very interesting decisions. A few holding the balls. Sorry, not holding the balls. Incorrect disposals, not called in the first half. Favoured Port a lot because they love just chucking the ball into tackle. And the whistle it sort of went away, and when it would come out, it would be on very weird decisions. I think, Fremantle will be very unhappy. Probably because they got the lesser end of what was a bit of a umpiring performance from them. But, as I said, 2 games in a row lost, but very respectable, not much between them. And, I'm very excited to see what they can do as the year goes on. As I said, get Darcy back. They might be a force. As I said, I was very ambivalent towards them. Didn't think they had enough depth. But even with a few injuries, they're finding players, they're finding roles. It's just, I think it will be a bit hard for them because, they will have at least 2 players in their best 22 not producing, I think. But from what they're able to do and their structure, they're still able to produce. And very happy with how they went.
That's a very fair assessment. Yeah, because with the Derby next week, or this week, I should say, you're going to want to hope that you have the best players available that you can.
Look, Eagles are plucky. I still got a feeling, just the way Freo's playing, and we'll talk about it a bit. For your tips, I would still lock in Fremantle.
So would
there
I.
Might be patches where the Eagles are on par, but honestly, we'll talk about it a bit later, but that Freo midfield's just something to behold at the moment.
Yeah, it's certainly a sight to see. We'll skip the Suns Hawthorn game and the Geelong North Melbourne game for the time being. Maybe we'll touch on them briefly, but we're going to jump over to West Coast and Richmond, which is not a game I really want to talk about, but I have to. The highs and lows come part of it. So the scoreline, if anyone isn't already aware, is 16-13, 109 to 10-10, 70. This is West Coast's first win of the season. Which, they were going to get one eventually. Hate that it was against us, but it happens. Veteran Elliot Yeo was pretty much in all Australian form. The past couple of seasons, he's been really riddled with injury, but now he's gotten back to his best, and he looks really thrilling. He finished with 27 touches, 15 clearances, a 2-1 scoreline, and 13 score involvements. Number 1 draft pick Harley Reid had his best game for his career so far, off of 5 games?
Yeah.
Which look
5.
Which looks really, really good for him. Consistency is key, and he's certainly getting better at it. He finished with 27 touches at 81% efficiency, 7 clearances, 6 inside 50s, and 8 score involvements. I was going to mention this a little bit later, but he also got the Rising Star for this week, and honestly, very well deserved. He was probably the best young player this week.
Vaguely looked at some of the other performances. I think it was night and day. Obviously, a few people upset that he didn't get it last week, but it doesn't matter. As I said, when you're playing that consistency, it's just bound to come together.
If
And
I'm
geez,
honest,
did it come together?
if Harley Reid didn't get it this week, I think McKelty Lafau probably would have gotten it because he had
Oh,
probably his best game so far this season as well,
yeah.
which I'm going to touch
I
on
think,
right now.
yeah,
So he was probably our best
exactly.
of field, considering we don't have a forward line at all at the moment. Um,
Yeah.
so he finished with a 3-2 scoreline from 12 touches, 8 marks, 5 tackles, and 6 score involvements. I was very, very impressed with how composed he looked now that he's gotten a lot
Oh,
more consistent at being like a forward
mm,
player. Um, and he's going to look a lot better, especially when we get Bolter back, which will be
mhm.
hopefully 2 weeks.
Up to the bar or?
Yeah, I think he's meant to come back Anzac Eve, but it's still fifty
Yeah.
fifty at the moment.
Okay.
Um, so having at least our primary tall up there to
Mm,
be able to help him out will
exactly.
only make him look better. I'm gonna go back to West Coast real quick and talk about Jeremy McGovern because I thought he had a
Mm,
really really good game off half back. Finished with 15 disposals at 100% efficiency. There are only 3 players on the Eagles that had 100% efficiency as well, so that's
yeah.
pretty impressive. 7 intercepts and 4 score involvements. He was very
I should say
lively.
one of those players is the perennially unlucky Luke Edwards, who suffered a knock and got subbed out in the second quarter.
Yeah,
Second quarter. Concussion.
yeah, he got a concussion, which is very unlucky for him.
Mm,
Um, Fringe defender Ben Miller for the Tigers also stood tall, I think, finishing with 19 touches at 100% efficiency. He's the only Richmond player to have 100% efficiency this week.
mm,
12 marks and 7 score involvements himself. I think
mhm.
he was the start of a lot of chains, which caused our score
Yeah.
involvements. And honestly, I'm really glad he's getting a lot more game time. Like, because normally he's normally the one that comes in for Grimes, which Grimes currently isn't playing, so kind of makes sense to have him in.
Mm,
But I hope he's further solidifying himself in our best 22 because I think he's been really really good every time he's played. It's just that
mm.
at the time Grimes was always better, and can't blame him. Triple premiership defender.
Yeah,
But yet, with
exactly.
this probably being Grimes' last season, I'd rather have Miller in and get that game time into him. And
Hmm.
hopefully he's able to solidify himself alongside Tyler Young, Gibcus, when Gibcus gets back from a second ACL.
Yeah.
And then, you've got Short back there, you've got Rioli back there, you've got
Mm,
Vlosten back there, Broad back there. Hopefully we have
mm.
Tom Brown as well. I think Tom Brown's looked really good off halfback. Um, or halfback midfield. He's kind of been floating
Yeah.
between the two. But yeah, I hope that once we get a little bit more consistency and they gel a lot more in our backline, we'll be able to put up a better defense against teams that we kind
Mm.
of drop our defenses a little on, such as West Coast, because they
Yeah.
looked way too
And
good.
yeah, I was gonna say someone who did feast on that a bit as they jumbled around. They've still got some solid players in defense, but as you say, it's all just been, moving pieces. Jake Waterman. You,
What a
you talk
game!
about Lafau having a game out of nowhere.
What a game for
Six
Jake
goals for
Waterman!
two from a player that, obviously there's two players being asked to lift, and they both performed fairly well. The other one being Jack Darling, but
Yeah, it was good to see Darling
honestly,
have a good game.
yeah, Waterman, he'll never be a option. He's just too up and down for that. But what he's able to do when he's on song, I actually thought he was going to be a star when he first entered. He dropped off a bit, obviously in the shade of Oscar Allen.
Yeah,
But this just reminds what he can do given a good amount of opportunity,
and
which the Eagles don't normally get.
yeah, and well, injury comes opportunity, and here is
Mm,
Waterman's opportunity with Oscar Allen out. And once Oscar Allen
yeah.
is ready to come back, it proposes a pretty interesting option for Simo to use because he could go with the two talls like
Mm,
Carlton and all of these other teams have at the moment, or he could possibly even move one further downfield.
Yeah, I think that's actually what might happen. I think Waterman actually has a lot of ability to come up, especially early in his career. He was very high on goal assists for Rising Star among his time. So I think while Waterman will probably be second for a couple of years, it wouldn't surprise me if that while they develop marriage, he might actually take a deeper option. And both Waterman and Oscar Allen just sort of left on their own devices, coming up forward when needed, but also being that deeper sort of threat. And just, as I said, it just provides a lot of flexibility, which unfortunately they just don't have at the moment with, Darling obviously not being that great coming up and not playing as well deep. So
But I mean,
it'll be a few years, but
this is probably
it's the start of a forward line.
this is probably one of Darling's last years anyway, so it's not
Yeah,
the
I would
worst
think the
looks.
last, but you never know. But yeah,
Yeah, I think they looked granted we look terrible. I'm just gonna put it out there.
yeah,
Almost majority of our list is currently injured,
yeah,
which isn't we're literally in West Coast position as they have been the past couple of years.
yeah,
It's not the prettiest look.
yeah.
I did have a look at our full injury list, and we do have some players that are actually going to really, really benefit
Coming
from
back,
this
yeah.
buy, and we'll be able to get them back
Mm,
for Anzac Eve. Bolter, hopefully being one of them. It'd be nice to actually have a forward. Um, but yeah, I got to credit where it's due. West Coast outplayed us massively,
yeah.
and we just weren't prepared.
And I think there's one thing, I don't know if you finished what you want to say, but there's something I would have brought up that I don't know if you saw an article that was just the perfect timing.
Go on.
Before the match had started, there was an article on the ABC, Cody Atkinson, Sean Lawson, unpacking the mysteries of the AFL centre bouncers and how the West Coast Eagles' aggressive style is a plus and minus for the Eagles. And basically, just to summarize, they were looking at centre bouncers and how the Eagles were a bit more willing to concede, a lot of what they call dangerous centre bounces. So centre bounces where they can tap the ball forward into the attacking 50.
Yep.
But at the same time, they were generating a higher percentage than the competition from ruck taps one themselves. So, it's sort of that double-edged sword. And I think, honestly, this week is where you saw when they can win it, they've actually got the structure to capitalize because they don't often win the clearances, but unfortunately absolutely smashed Richmond in that category, 48-25. And, as I said, obviously, as you mentioned, Yo was an absolutely clinical from them. Harley Reid did his own things. But yeah, as I said, it goes to show how there's probably a bit more structure this year. As I said, Simpson's still a veteran coach. I don't think he's the best coach in the world.
I don't think
But,
he's definitely not the best coach in the league.
Oh yeah, exactly. But you know what I mean? It's one thing where despite how bad the Eagles had been looking, I think some of the talk about the priority picks, coming up, was a bit strange in my mind. Because yeah, as I said, I think the West Coast Eagles have been playing a lot better than last year.
I don't think they need a priority pick. They just need consistency.
Yeah. I mean, as I said, time will tell whether they actually have the list to consistently get on with it. But I mean, it's performances. And as I said, yeah, they'll be interesting. And honestly, as mentioned, we'll probably briefly touch on Hawthorn and North. They've at least got a possible defensive structure at the moment. And, the two teams without a win at the moment don't. So you could say, like, in terms of lists, there's actually some advantages over West Coast lists. Obviously, midfield's not nearly as impressive as North's.
Yeah. Although
I'd probably argue that their list is better than Hawthorn's, but
I do want to just mention Tim Kelly. I think he had one of his best performances that he's had over the past couple of years. And I stress years because, like, I mean, granted, injuries were a part of that, as it were for the entirety of West Coast period of time there. But he looked as good as he did when he was back at Geelong, which is exactly what West Coast wanted him for. Apart from him, wanting to jump home.
And I think it's actually one of the things that the article pointed out is that, he was actually doing some good things, being dangerous. It's just it wasn't being converted into forward score.
Hmm.
And this is a game where it was a much more reward for effort situation for Kelly. And I'm sort of glad because, as I said, it was a not always rewarded his hard year last year. Oh, as you said, he didn't exactly he wasn't like a top 10 midfielder or anything. He was just the best midfielder
That they
in a
had.
pretty
Yeah.
exactly. But yeah, as I said, it was a nice little reward for effort from last year, I think. And as you said, in terms of pure stats and involvement, it was probably his best.
Yeah, like I
For
didn't
a
really
while.
make a note of it, but I do remember seeing that he got 34 touches, which I thought was at least worthy to mention, even though he wasn't
Yeah,
really best of field.
yeah.
But yeah, so
Um,
we'll go quickly touch on injuries because I didn't actually mention all of that. Jaden Short
mhm.
injured his calf during the second
Yeah,
quarter. Very very sad because we all love Shorty. He is one of
yeah,
our favorite players to watch. Um, Edwards, as we mentioned earlier, concussion. He'll miss the Derby this week, and he'll
yeah.
probably miss a game next week, I would assume.
I think so.
Because
I think he's
it's only a
actually
6 day
near.
break for them this week, and then I think it's a 7 day break. So I think he'll
Yeah,
miss 2 weeks.
I can look it up. I'm pretty sure he's in cotton wool territory. I think he's approaching his third concussion.
Oh, it's not great.
Is Yeah, I think it was a couple of concussions and a lot of hand injuries or something. He just never had a run at it.
Mm. And
Because
then
I'm actually pretty high on Luke Edwards. I
yeah,
like him more than his brother, but yeah, just never had a go.
and then Jameson, who was a late change for the Eagles, out with a hamstring,
Hmm.
which I don't think it was like a massive injury. I think it was just like soreness, which isn't too bad.
Yeah,
He'll be fine for the Derby, hopefully, if they're going to play him. So yeah, that sums
and
up West
yeah,
Coast first win.
allowed forgotten defender Alex Witherden to have what was a pretty solid game, in my opinion. As I said, it's an amazing drop off for him from what was probably looking to be one of the best intercept defenders in the comp. Unfortunately, just hasn't gelled too much with the Eagles' defense, but kept Morris Rioli Jr. very quiet
Hmm.
and got his own.
Yeah, credit where it's
Hopefully,
due.
he might come back to the side. Because if he's on song, like he's still young, like 26, I think.
Yeah, I think Witherden's fairly young.
Yeah,
Credit where it's due. West Coast has outplayed us. They did a really strong game. They're like you can see in their previous performances over the past couple of weeks, they were building up to a really strong game.
yeah,
Unfortunate that it was Richmond, but
yeah.
highs and the lows. We got to play. We're still playing some young kids and just trying to get some experience into
Hmm.
that. And I can't really fault that too much.
Yeah. I think overall it was very patchy by Richmond. But
Our
there
first
was still
quarter
some top
was our
contributors.
best quarter. That
Yeah,
was
for
it.
sure. Um, yeah, but still some live eyes. I don't even think. Did you mention Shy Bolton?
No,
Absolutely
I
fantastic
didn't
game.
because I thought he was
Yeah,
a kind of a 50-50 game for him. Like he still had some really good running carry. Again, he's got some great legs. He's got some great jumps.
yeah.
I think his scoreline was 2-1 off the top of my head.
3-1.
Oh,
Yeah,
3-1, sorry. Um, he had a decent game, but
I get it though. Yeah, like I do remember him dropping in and out, and it was sort of like Liam Baker, whereas if like his best moments were near best on field, but obviously went very quiet when he did.
yeah, if he gets shut down hard, you notice it very very obviously.
Yeah,
I want to very very quickly mention the possible Mark of the Year contender to Nick Boston. Uh, Again,
yeah, that's fantastic.
there's always great marks that come from a lot of these
Yeah,
games, and it's always good to see a Richmond player get a good mark.
yeah,
We don't really see him all that often now that Jack's retired.
yeah, and I think just Vlauston himself, it's been a very solid year from him, and to make sure he gets on the highlight wheels, it's very hard to do as a lockdown defender, but
It is very crazy
that's one way.
that he still isn't an All Australian. I'm hoping this season will be his season, but
Oh,
we'll see how we
yeah,
go.
oh, yeah.
I think that does it for that game. Is there anything since we did skip over them? Do you want to quickly mention anything from the Hawthorn game or the North game?
I mean, honestly, I didn't watch much of either. The Hawthorn game, it was very much, it's a team. Both, I think it's just one of those matchups where Hawthorn, again, while they still have this still edging towards uncontested style of play,
Mm-hmm.
they just got obliterated by a team that just plays uncontested a lot better. Um, Also, again, talking about players that are very unlucky not to get a Rising Star nomination, Sam Closey also
Oh
apparently
yeah,
played another fantastic
I
game.
agree.
Two
He
goals,
looked really good from what I saw.
built, gave him a big pump up. Probably listened to the podcast and went, you know what? I was already doing it for my team, but let's do it for the boys on Coast to Coast. Um, so yeah, so as I said, so that was just fantastic by them. Again, it was a very patchy performers. A few people that did well. Finn McGinnison scored 3 goals for Hawthorn.
Mhm.
Sort of apparently played a tagging role on Flanders, who, you know, still was able to get his game going. But yeah, it was a very, you know, air performance.
Did they keep Hardwick up
Just
forward?
looking.
I can't remember. I didn't look at the stats.
I will check for you. Um, Sorry, just about to flick over to the next game.
No, go for it.
Hardwick was playing as a forward and got absolutely no supply. Kicked a goal, registered a mark, and then just got sent back in the fourth quarter.
That's unlucky.
Yeah, as I said, I don't think there was much of his. I think it was just the way
It
the
was just
forward line
yeah. I mean,
was
Hawthorn's
going.
midfield again isn't the greatest.
No, as I said, it's very patchy. It's definitely, I guess, led by the Warpedo and what's his name on the outside? Uh,
Uh, yeah, I'm blanking
am
as
I
well.
thinking of? Weddle,
That's right.
Weddle. Um, but yeah, there's not much support, and a lot of players obviously having a pretty down match for them. Just not much you can do, like your Williams. Obviously, Gold Coast. It is good to see them consistently beating teams that they should be above. More good signs for them. I mean, we'll hopefully talk about them a bit more in a more entertaining matchup, but uh, you know, nothing outrageous, nothing unusual.
Yep.
Just a very solid game. And I think Gold Coast, Geelong, North. I actually did watch a bit of that. I think one thing I do want to highlight: bloody Geelong getting players out of nowhere. Shannon Neal, from what I looked a bit, rotated in the ruck.
Mm-hmm.
Only got 5 hit outs, but 3 goals won, and they weren't exactly your standard kick marks. He actually, I think he collected the ball below his knees for one of them. So, another athletic toll for Geelong because, they totally didn't need any more.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, they definitely didn't need
Darren,
any more.
Jerry Cameron booted 6. Brad Close converted with 4 goals. Yeah, as I said, not much that. They were just doing what they wanted. As I said, North just don't have the back line at the
No,
moment.
sadly they don't.
Made a bit worse by Colby McKercher, probably one of the best players in their back line, halfback. I guess obviously Sheasel, but Sheasel's more for chains than actual defending.
Sheasel's
Um,
and from the way Sheasel goes about it, he's probably going to get pushed into the midfield at some point anyway.
oh yeah, like it's not Sheasel's role to defend, so it's like,
No,
well, I'm not including him in the defensive. I'm not saying because he's a bad player, because he's a gun. But I said McKercher, I actually thought was probably one of the better standard defenders. Went off for the last 5 games.
mm-hmm.
Went down early. I think he's going to miss a bit. It was ribs again. Went to hospital.
It's rough.
Hope he's all right. Yeah, as I said, yeah, it was just a mixed bag. Charlie Comben for them was in defence. Apparently, he was on Cameron, so it's a pretty hard first matchup coming back into it.
Rough.
But again, moving pieces. What are you going to do? Yeah, there's a lot of players that had a bit of a down game. Wardlaw, Greenwood, meh. Stevenson got dropped, which I think was probably a bit deserved.
Yeah, he's been very,
'Cause
very
he's just
quiet over the past couple of weeks.
very, very quiet. Here's the other one. Jasinkin still going quiet. I wouldn't be you can't drop your captain, but
You
geez, he's
can
been
drop your
struggling with the role.
captain. Cogs was
And
dropped when he
Ford
was
did last
captain.
year.
You can very much do it.
Yeah, I know, but it's just so disappointing. I love him as a player, but he's very much struggling.
Maybe he just wasn't
Um,
100% after he got knocked out the other week.
yeah, still.
Although he did play really well last week, so I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, I do want to say, Bigoa New, and that's
Former
right. I
Richmond
was
player
looking
Biggie.
at.
Yeah, we call him Biggie.
Yeah. Sorry, do you know how to pronounce his name actually correct?
I think
probably
I don't know how to pronounce his first name, but I think it's Nyon or something like that.
Nyon. Yeah, so I was looking at it, got a few possessions, and the person he was matched up on, Oliver Henry, didn't have much. Again, I only watched like the first quarter, so I can't really say overall, but I thought there was a good performance by him. And
I'm
yeah,
glad
as I said,
North is giving him game time because we could never really get him into our side, which is
yeah.
really unlucky because I thought he had really good potential.
And honestly, you could make the call for Nick Larkey just because he's been so bloody accurate for North, but Eddie Ford, out of nowhere, has probably been the best, might even be the best player overall for North Melbourne. Kicked in 3 goals, which is good to see. So, a few good things, a lot of bad for North. But Geelong at Cardinia, again, and it's probably the point that's been made, pretty harsh for North and West Coast. A lot of tough away games, a lot of hard opposition to start the year, and hopefully North Melbourne might actually build on a few of the better things up against Hawthorn next week, and West Coast obviously got their win, so props to them.
As we've been saying over the past couple of weeks, like North have a decent forward line. They have a great midfield. It's just their back line that lets them down.
Like
they
they
don't
literally
have the
just don't
resources.
have the players.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
exactly. So as I said, against Hawthorn, who I think North Melbourne should be able to comfortably outpace.
Absolutely agree.
I would. I'm going to talk about it a bit later. I would put solids on North, despite a pretty disappointing effort against the Cats.
Yeah, I think North are going to come back stronger against Hawthorn than Hawthorn are going to come back stronger against North.
Yeah.
Because as much as I like what Hawthorn are now doing with having Blake Hardwick in the forward line where he should be,
yeah,
I don't think it's going to be enough, despite North's very minimal backline, to just outpace them, especially in the middle, because that's where that's where the game's gonna be won, and North just have the better players for that.
Yeah, and I think it's not only that. Like, I think the two problems with North as well, they have a few players that are underperforming on their list, and they're just getting games because they don't have that many options. But Hawthorn's just that mismatch. There's not much cohesion, and it tends to bring very varied efforts week in, week out. So I actually think structurally North are a bit better off despite, some mixed performances.
Yeah, I agree. I think that does it for games for this week. I'm gonna briefly mention the MRO reports. Again, suspensions only. Like, if it's a fine, it doesn't matter too much because they're playing the week after. Charlie Cameron, this is being contested at the tribunal, so don't commit to this 100%. But Charlie Cameron will miss 1 match for rough conduct against Jake Lever. Again, it's being challenged. He could play next week or this week. We'll find out tomorrow. I say tomorrow, Tuesday. Which we might have an answer for this once this podcast goes live on Wednesday. And then Matt Crouch, which I believe this isn't being contested. I saw the replay for this. It's very, very fair. He'll miss 1 match for forceful front-on contact with Jack Carroll.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where, as talked a bit about the Butters one, where I think impact just played a lot, and the fact that Carroll came out pretty well was pretty lucky for Matt Crouch because, I said if it was a concussion, he probably could have gone for free.
Yeah, I agree.
But it wasn't. You know, you thank your lucky stars. And overall, even if it is luck, I'd like players not getting concussed overall. So, good to see there. Honestly, with all the like back thing, I actually forgot to check out the Charlie Cameron one, so I have no opinion on it whatsoever.
Yeah,
I'll let you have a call on that.
I didn't see it either, but it's
So,
very fair.
yeah, it is what it is.
Other news: Jason Dunstall, aka the Chief, has been elevated to legend status in the AFL Hall of Fame. The official ceremony for it, I believe, is in June. But they let it out publicly this week, which I think is very fair because he's done a lot for the game, both on and off the field, and absolutely deserves it.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, I imagine Hawthorn will probably do something for them. I don't know if it'll be this week. It'll probably more likely be a home game for them.
Yeah, it'll probably be a home game. They'll do it.
But, you know, as I said, sometimes you just got to get motivation from nowhere. And I'm not saying that Jason Dunstall being inducted will be one, but, you know, as I said, if you can get around him at least, you know, give him a game for, you know, what was a very solid era for Hawthorn. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean,
unfortunately, a bit before my time. I was saying before, I never actually.
The year he retired was the year I was born, so I didn't get to see him play at all.
Exactly, and for me, yeah, I said he retired '98, which I might have been aware of football at that time, but definitely not appreciating. So, yeah, but I will be getting to the point where the era of my players are getting inducted into the Hall of Fame, so that wouldn't be too far off, making me feel old.
No, it wouldn't be too far off at all. I agree. All right, I'm gonna bring up the ladder on the YouTube format. So this is what it looks like. For audio listeners, I will run them down, at least the top 8. So it goes GWS, Geelong, Port, Sydney, Melbourne, Carlton, Freo, and the Suns in the top 8. Congratulations to the Suns for staying in the top 8 so far.
Yep.
As we're now 1/5 of the way through the season, because there's 24 rounds plus the opening round. So technically there's 25 rounds this season, which is a lot of football.
It is.
It's crazy that we're actually at this amount. It's going to be even bigger of a season once as he gets in, I assume.
I think so, yeah. Or at least they'll convert round 0 to more of a something else. I don't know.
Yeah, and then to round out the bottom 9. No, hang on. Maths is failing me right now. Everything 10. Below the top 8. Thank you.
9 to 18.
9 to 18. So we've got Essendon, Brisbane, Western Bulldogs, St Kilda, Collingwood. Can they stay down there, please? The Adelaide Crows, Richmond, West Coast, Hawthorn, and North Melbourne.
Yeah.
With
it's very interesting.
With GWS and Geelong being the only 2 teams to have not lost a game so far this season, and Hawthorn and North to be the only 2 teams who have not won a game so far this season.
Both with solid percentages, not ridiculous. You know, it's been a few like 180s at this point in the season, which is probably good for the competition. But yeah. So pretty much percentages for 1 to 7 are pretty good. Gold Coast are in the 8 with a percentage of 105. But fortunately for them, the on ties with win are Essendon, who are at 90.8. So they'll get to stay there.
Well, if they don't get a win this week, Brisbane or the Doggies could jump them if Brisbane and the Doggies both get a win, because they both have a higher percentage on 112 and 111 respectively.
Yeah. I don't think we need to say too much about the top 6, because I think
it's pretty solidified at this point in time.
Expect that only one would drop out, if any, and it would take a pretty bad run. So you got 7th.
Well, here's the thing. Like, if Freo are probably going to win the Derby this week.
Yeah.
You'd expect... Well, you might not expect them to be a massive margin, considering how West Coast has performed.
Yeah.
But they're probably going to get the 4 points anyway, and they'll at least jump to 5th. And probably sit under Sydney if they don't get percentage.
Yeah, and that will be the first time we get a proper ladder, which is next week, where every team's played each other. Oh, sorry, no. Every team has played the same amount of games. We don't have
Yes.
any bye nonsense to worry about.
Yes, because this week there is a bye
Um,
with Richmond and Melbourne because we're playing
yeah,
Anzac Eve the week after. And I say the
yeah.
week after, it's a Wednesday night game.
Hmm. No, okay. I will say Carlton and Freo are sort of in the same boat where I think Fremantle's got a much nicer draw. But their forward line, it doesn't quite look as good. Whereas Carlton, yeah, when they're on song, they can generate a lot of goals.
Mhm.
The defense is pretty okay. But geez, they got a tough runner coming up. Probably got one of the hardest schedules in football. But yeah, so yeah, they might wane, but made the most of their opportunities.
They'll do the best that they can.
Obviously, they would have liked to be 5-0. But hey, I mean, they won Brisbane when they probably couldn't have. You'll take that trade off with the Adelaide loss.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah. So we'll go to the sides nipping at the heels. Gold Coast Suns, Essendon Lions, Western Bulldogs, St Kilda, and we'll put Collingwood in there. They still look like outliers. 8 points, 80, 88 margin. The only team beside Essendon in the mix with a sub 100 percentage. Yeah.
There isn't too much more to really say. It just
Do you think
it's consistency.
what? Yeah. Do you think? Are you bullish on any of those teams making the 8? From what you've seen?
Jumping into the gate over the next couple of rounds.
Yeah,
Brisbane
even that.
probably.
Yeah.
St Kilda would be nice, just because I like St Kilda.
Yeah.
With how Essendon's been performing, I could see them jumping into the 8. But again, Essendon and St Kilda are the two teams that I really struggle to really.
Yeah, I
Really
think
trust.
Essendon's going to be a lot more feast of famine, and for St Kilda, it will just be how they win the close contest. Because St Kilda will be that scrappy team. They won't get huge percentages, because every game with them's just like a dour contest.
Yeah.
But yeah, as I said, Brisbane with their structure, how good they were last year, and just some of the players that they have. Yeah, I would expect them to take the Suns' spot, unfortunately. But honestly, Suns been great so far. I wasn't that bullish. I think I had them in the bottom 4. If not, one above Richmond, who are in the bottom 4.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. So, but from what I've seen, pretty great so far.
It's too early to really judge who's going to be in the final top 8, apart from me probably
Exactly.
the Giants and Geelong, because they are the two best teams at the moment. But yeah, otherwise it's just too early to call for that late in the season.
Exactly. As I said, you can be pretty bullish, and if you're in the top 6 at the moment, I would be fairly safe. You're probably a
high chance.
September contender.
Yeah. All right. Shall we move on to the games coming up this week?
Yeah, just
We'll
briefly touch over them.
St Kilda and the Western Bulldogs at Marvel Stadium Thursday night game.
When two forces come together, I mean, what can you really pick from this?
Again, it's going to be another game one in the middle. That's pretty much it. It's again for the doggies. It's
St Kilda.
It's liberal or nothing.
Are nullifying. And honestly, I think their backline actually matches up pretty well against the Bulldogs' forward line.
Mm-hmm.
I think St Kilda's backline's still been fantastic. Won a lot of games last year off it. But yeah, so it's what they can do off turnover, I think. As I said, the Bulldogs' defense isn't that fantastic. If they can get some run on the outside, where the Bulldogs sort of have been a bit struggling this year, haven't really. There's a lot of rotation inside and outside. I don't think they found overall consistency, but at the same time, St Kilda have got to protect the middle because that's where Bulldogs tend to get their attack from.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It feels dirty tipping St Kilda because I don't trust them ever.
Again, St Kilda and Essendon are the two teams I struggle to put my faith in, but at the moment, it's probably going to have to go St Kilda, I think.
I think so. I just don't like what I've seen from the Bulldogs, but they can flip on a switch. Like, they'll make me look silly and win by 60 points in some universes. But I
Again,
just don't think it's this
I mean,
universe.
Libba's not playing this week, but again, it's Libba or
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, the Bond's been alright. He's just been shifted. Some games been fantastic. Other times he's had to play forward when their forward line's been struggling.
Yeah.
Again, honestly, the only reason he doesn't have a Brownlow is, as I said, it's the Petrarca effect. Sometimes he just needs to make magic forward. He does well enough that it justifies doing so,
Hmm.
but takes away from the spectacle of a game.
Yeah, I agree with that. Adelaide and Essendon at the Adelaide Oval.
Oh,
Adelaide are
like,
favourites for this, being that it's a home game, and
yeah,
they've actually, again, coming off that really great win against Carlton, they look to be in pretty good
yep.
form. However, Essendon, I think, are a sneaky contender this week.
Yeah, I would say so. And it's you wouldn't expect too much defense being played. I've said that Adelaide defensively have been a bit better than last year.
Hmm.
I do think they have some good pieces there. Did get banged up a bit, and that will be a bit of a concern. Just coming off a pretty strong gut effort against Carlton. Um, Compared to Essendon, that gets the full week break. Uh, but yeah, Essendon. No, I guess it's the midfield again. Like, it
Yeah.
seems very base saying that, but where Adelaide haven't found that consistency, and Essendon have punished teams that aren't that good at stopping centre clearances. Again, operation against Port, but otherwise fantastic. Um, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how offense is generated. I
Hmm.
hope Adelaide can still play good attacking football and not drop off. And yeah, I'll give it to them. I just think, yeah, Essendon's defense doesn't really look that great at stopping what Adelaide should have.
Yeah, especially if they're going up against Tex again this week. And
Yeah, well,
if Tex is on, like he could easily just completely dominate that forward line.
unfortunately, I don't think Tex has the advantage of resting. If Adelaide were going on all cylinders, like, he might get a few away games off, but they'll need Tex to be playing the majority of the season if he can.
Yeah, especially when they're down their other key forward. I've already forgotten his name.
Phil Thorpe.
Yes, thank you. But I mean, with like with Rankin pushing a lot more forward now through the midfield,
Hmm.
like they at least
Well, it
have
could
some
be a
more
battle of the
options.
mosquito fleets,
Yeah.
actually. Or whatever a small crow is. A crowlet.
Well, it's definitely not a murder. That is a big group of crows.
Yes.
Uh, all
For
right.
sure.
Collingwood and Port Adelaide at the MCG Saturday afternoon.
God, I hope it isn't the time where Collingwood gets their defense together. I'll be
Well,
so mad.
surprisingly enough, they are favourites going into this match. But I think if Port, show their consistency as they have been over the past couple of weeks, they should pretty much
Yeah.
tear them apart.
Yeah, well, I don't think that Port's played a bad game. Collingwood obviously have. I think defensive structure, because Port have a lot of threats, can push them wide. Um,
To be fair,
but as I
Collingwood are
said,
also coming off of a bye, so there's a fair chance they could lose going off of bye trends.
I don't try too much into that. I think it's just some preparation, but yeah, you'll. It's always whatever. However, the narrative you are going at any different time is how lies affect people. But yeah, I don't know. I do think I think Port's just playing a better style than Collingwood.
Hmm.
If Collingwood can't defend, Port's just going to obliterate them, I would think. And I know that's a bold call, but a lot of the time it's been Collingwood nullifying a lot in the back line, sneaking a few goals forward. Um, but Port's defense has been solid. I can't see Collingwood scoring all that much. I could see them holding Port to a low score, but it would have to be quite the turnaround in defense.
Yeah.
But if Collingwood win, MVP again, big Billy Frampton against his old side. Uh, just you'll probably get someone like he'll probably go on Dixon or maybe even Marshall. So we'll see. how they can lock down on 3 very prominent tall forwards.
He normally takes the second or third forward, right? He's never usually on first.
Oh, he has actually. I think he has taken a few first because, as I said, they've been trying to get Darcy Moore more into intercepted.
Ah, yeah.
So, as I said, it really depends on how they feel and how comfortable they are. But, as I said, Moore's probably going to take a big forward this week anyway. So, as I said, he might decide to take. Actually, no, now I think about it, it would make more sense if Moore goes to Marshall. Marshall's more athletic, likes running up the ground, and, keep.
You'd probably put
what's his
Frampton on
name?
Dixon because Frampton can keep
Yeah,
up
on
with him.
Dixon.
Like
Keep it forward.
Dixon's slower, but Dixon's bigger.
Exactly, so he'll be patrolling deep. But yeah, as I said, I know it is very bullish to say Port's going to emphatically beat Collingwood. I'm not going to say like 100 points or anything, but I reckon they could get 30-point victory. I don't know. I just think when your team's going well, you got to put faith in them.
Yeah. Plus Port need the games on the MCG.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? If Port stuff up, you can laugh at me next week. So,
well, I mean, we're not playing this week, so I might get to laugh at you anyway.
Yeah, true.
All right, Carlton and the Giants at Marvel Stadium. With GWS's injuries going into this week, losing 4 key players, it doesn't look very good. Honestly, this could be their first loss.
Could be. I mean, Carlton do, as I said, depending on what happens to Sard and McGovern, you would imagine both serious hamstring injuries. They'll miss a few. It's not like it's that free the other way. Because as I said, Giants, tall forwards, very fantastic. It's going to be hard to stop Olive Hogan, Riccardi,
that's true.
I
was gonna say, like, Giants forwards are a lot more consistent than Mackay and Kerner.
But honestly, yeah, if Sam Taylor misses, and he will, yeah. No, I must admit, it does give Carlton a little nice edge. I'll probably be tipping him, but it'll be a game to watch.
Yeah, I think it's going to be game of the round, honestly. Apart from the
derby,
even
that
which we'll talk about in a sec.
Yeah. I think it's just going to be a good Saturday.
Honestly,
maybe I'm wrong, Collingwood.
This Saturday is actually going to be a thrilling day. It's got 4 really, really good matches to watch, which is crazy. So
Brisbane Geelong.
Yeah, Brisbane Geelong is also really interesting. Brisbane are favourites going in, but I think Geelong are probably gonna. Going off of how Brisbane have looked at the Gabba so far this year, I think Geelong should probably be favourites going in. But
look, I mean, as I said, it's one very bad game, one meh game where they just sort of found a way to lose against Carlton. But it's just the way Geelong have been able to find forward opportunities. Brisbane's defence isn't that great. So you imagine Geelong had the advantage there. Again, in the midfield, where Geelong have been doing well despite losing a fair few players. It's just a matter of not letting Brisbane control over them. Again, being at the Gabba, it's probably going to be a humid affair. So I think really it's just whether Geelong can set up their game. If they can, I'll tip them. But if it's a grimy affair, I'll be surprised if Brisbane are able to kick away. Maybe Geelong will regress to the mean in terms of goal kicking. But yeah, as I said, it's a 60-40 at best. I'd probably tip Geelong.
Yeah, I'm probably going to go with Geelong. Granted, could go either way. Ins and outs might end up being the deciding factor, to be honest. But yeah, who knows? All right, the Derby.
Yeah.
We did already talk about this for the most part. But Freo.
I'm not as bullish. I think it'll be one where it'll be like an arm wrestle where West Coast will hang in a bit, but then just get flat out beaten by the midfield. And it's just a weird way that derbies tend to go. They don't tend to be close. They can be fiery.
I mean, it's been a while since the derby's been close.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. I mean, as you said, it's just interesting to see how West Coast will take it. Now that they've got this run on, And, it's only one win, but it's, again, 3 games where they've been stat-wise competitive.
Again, yeah, it's just
Against,
consistency. That's all you can really ask
yeah,
for.
as I said, you just hope that they don't count their eggs before they've hatched and, put in that effort to try and nullify a bit of Freo. You know, and as I said, with the way that they've been dangerous with their centre clearances, break the line early, it might be a way to expose the dreaded duo of Pierce and Ryan, who I don't think I've even not mentioned in my best ofs when I've covered
No,
Fremantle.
that's usually
They've
those
just
two
been,
up there.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, and Freo, they're a bit iffy going into their forward line. Eagles might be able to set up defense, but just watch out because Tracy, Amos
Mhm.
always take their opportunities. It seems, and yeah, if I don't know, it's just I don't see much for West Coast, but I do actually. It's like it's a respectful, not very, because I do think they're going well. It's just I really rate Freo at the moment,
Yeah,
and
even if West Coast
they'll be
lose,
wanting to get a win.
yeah,
For
absolutely.
how good they've been playing.
Even if West Coast lose, which likely chance they will, just because of how it looks. Like you just want to see
Yes.
some good consistency still. You want it to be close,
Yeah.
especially after how they've been playing and what they've been building up towards.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right.
And yeah, as I said, Freo, unlucky last 2 weeks. They'll want to make sure it's out of any bullcrap lucks range. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they want to
If
put the
they get a
foot. They
chance to
want to
get
try and
lead,
put the
they'll
foot
want to
down.
take it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Sunday games: Sydney and Gold Coast at the SCG.
It'll be interesting. Sydney coming off a bye and looking a bit iffy before then, after having a very strong start to the season. Um, Gold Coast, again, they like to set up this uncontested game. They've got some talent in the midfield.
Mm-hmm.
I do think some of Sydney will nullify them the way that they play, take away some of that marking contest on the wing. I don't think Gold Coast will like that very much. I don't know. Yeah, I think it's just the Sydney forward setup, how well that gets. If Sydney do, I think they'll have a comfortable victory.
Mm-hmm.
I can't see Gold Coast getting too far out of arm's reach. I wouldn't be surprised if for most of the game Gold Coast were in 3 goals.
Well, I don't
I don't think
know.
it's a good matchup for them.
I don't know where Sydney's injuries are in regards to like Luke Parker, but I'm pretty sure Taylor Adams is going to come in this week.
Yeah, because he was in last week, but he was a bit quieter. So last week, last played round for Sydney.
Yes. So it could be a key difference maker. Although the Suns,
Yeah,
despite I don't think they have a great record at the SCG, which isn't all that surprising. Again, they look really good so far this season. You can't really fault them too much.
Yeah.
There are some aspects of their game that they are pretty down on, but you gotta, again, same with the Eagles. Consistency. It's all you really want. Again, they're still a young side. They
exactly.
finals hopes are what they are after. They have brilliant key players. That midfield is insane.
Yeah.
You got really special young guns in the defense, like McAndrew, for example, like who can really, especially against the Sydney forward line, really have an opportunity to stand up.
Exactly. I'd like to see him aggressively because some of Sydney's leading forward hasn't been that great. So if he might be able to line up a few intercepts, I reckon.
So I think, despite Sydney being very clear favourites, I think the Suns have a really inside chance.
Yeah. And as I said, arm's reach is what you want to see, and arm's reach for most of the game.
Yeah. But yeah, probably going to tip Sydney. I'll be honest.
Yeah, me too.
It's probably just how it's going to go. And then the last game of the round, this Spoon Bowl.
Spoon Bowl!
Between North Melbourne and Hawthorn.
Yeah. Kind of already discussed this a tiny bit.
Yeah, we did. Which is, I'm very interested in the fact that Hawthorn are apparently favourites when North clearly just look better.
Yeah, what?
That kind of shocks me. I assume it's just. I don't know what it's based on, but that is wild.
The one thing I will say is like again how so like Hawthorn worked the ball a lot from the outside, which hasn't really been North's MO. Like they haven't had much offense from the outside. Normally other teams have been able to work the ball in from there, so
Yeah,
it'll be interesting
North are a much better
in that
inside team
regard.
than an outside team,
Oh, for
despite having
sure.
really
And I think
strong
that's
running
just where the
carry.
dominance is gonna come from.
Yeah,
Like I
absolutely.
can't see like they'll get more clearances. I can't see them defending that well off the clearances. So for Hawthorn, it's really just what they can get off turnover. Um, and you know what? It's scraps against scraps. Hawthorn's forward line, North's defense. You know, it would take some coming together in my mind for Hawthorn to, um, keep with them because I don't think, from what I've seen, North Melbourne should struggle to score.
Hmm.
There's a question on can Hawthorn keep up. I think no. But again, it's not exactly as is it. It's not against a lockdown defense. It's not up against like St Kilda or Fremantle or GWS.
Hmm.
So you know, um,
Yeah,
yeah.
we're
But it's weird because yeah,
both going North here, but yeah, it's weird that Hawthorn are kind of favorites going in.
yeah. It's so weird that I feel so pessimistic because as I said, for a lot of it, I've just been like, oh, straws in a hat for the bottom three. But as I
Yeah,
said,
we don't want to
presented with the
be
fact.
we don't want to be negative. We don't want to be pessimistic. We want
No.
teams to be consistent. We want them to be competitive. We want the game itself to be fun to
Yeah.
watch. Granted, umpires, they're not very helping in that regard at
Yeah.
this point in time.
Uh,
We did a big rant on that the other week.
yeah.
Um,
But you know what? If I'm free, I'm going to keep an eye on that game. So if Hawthorn win, I have something positive to say about him.
yeah,
Because
I might.
I've been struggling a bit on this podcast to say enough good things about
I'm
Hawthorn.
glad they at least showed something last week against Geelong, like especially with the
Yeah.
Blake Hardwick move. I just hope, yeah, again, consistency. Please give us something to work
Yeah,
with. And then,
exactly.
yeah, buys for this week are Richmond and Melbourne because they're playing the Anzac Eve clash Wednesday night. Oh, the week after on Wednesday night, I should say. And then the traditional Anzac Day match, obviously on on the Thursday, um, between what is it? It's Essendon and Collingwood, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. So again, it's going to be a big marquee week next week, and we will talk about that when that rolls around. So
Yep.
to finish up, as we normally do, I'm going to ask you what you're up to this week.
And as always, I don't really have a good answer. Honestly, as I said, I've just been doing a few things, been waiting on a few opportunities in terms of work. So in the meantime, I've just been trying to, do a bit on my own. Obviously, work on the podcast a bit, try and get a bit of fitness, and there's a bit of regularity. You know,
Fair enough.
Been a bit quiet, so whatever I can do in and around. I love making content, and I love being on the podcast, so that's always nice to do, work towards, and yeah, up on my friend's stream on Thursday, talk a bit of trash.
Sounds very good to me. We do that a lot on my stream, which is
I
coming up on
know.
Tuesday.
It's very dichotomous coming on here, being so serious, and then just talking the absolute nonsense. 'Cause I get some very fringy ideas. You get it a bit on here, maybe with like haircut theory. That's a bit of my insaneness, but most
you know,
otherwise,
some,
you keep me under wraps pretty well.
sometimes we just want to focus on the game. Sometimes it's more entertaining to
Exactly.
talk about.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me this week, again, work. Tomorrow, in quotation marks, tomorrow as we record this, but Tuesdays is again Open Tuesday for my Overwatch stream. It's the last one of the season because the new season starts on Wednesday, which I'm gonna have to really, really dig myself into because I'm going away in a couple of weeks.
Yep.
I'm not gonna have any time. We will update you all on what the plans are for the podcast when that rolls around.
Yep.
But again, for the rest of this week, it's
Try and
just
get stuff out. Yeah.
yeah, we'll see how we go. Again, yeah, it's just work. I'll try and watch whatever games I can. I'm not really too busy this weekend, so hopefully I'll be able to watch a lot more than I did last week, but who knows? Something may come up. We don't know. I'm hoping that I might actually be at the Thursday night game. I
Yeah.
think that'll be pretty interesting to watch in person, but that's a 50-50 at the moment. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome.
So, without further ado, I will start winding us down. Thank you all so much for coming to hang out with us this week. Thank you for watching on YouTube. Thank you for listening on Spotify. Links to everything, as always, is down below or on screen, as you can see here. For audio listeners, I didn't actually mention this at the start, but I've updated our tips for this week. Psyrick is in front with 3. He is on 30 points, and I am on 27. The upsets really messed with us. I don't think anyone is surprised. I assume most people are in a similar boat.
I think in our entire competition, there were only 4 different tips, and 2 of us were successful tipping West Coast, and the other 2 were unfortunately lost in the ether.
Yeah, it's a AFL tipping. It's a harsh mistress.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, again, thank you all so much. Hopefully, the games coming up are going to be really entertaining, and we can have a lot more to talk about. There's nothing ever wrong with going on for a long rant.
Oh, for sure.
Until then, I will thank you all one more time, and we will see you all next week. Goodbye.